The antebellum period in American history is marred by the dark reality of slavery. The economy of the South thrived on the backs of enslaved people, reducing human beings to mere property. However, as the 19th century dawned, the transatlantic slave trade faced growing opposition.
All that I know, they teach you to mind your master and your missus.
Been slaves all our lives. My mother was a slave, my sister was a slave, father was a slave.
They treat me nice as they could treat me. And if I want anything, I'll ask for it. I was taught it that way by my old master.
These are the voices of former slaves, victims of one of America's greatest crimes against humanity. Listening to them speak and hearing their lamentations does more than history books ever could. John Henry Folk, a storyteller and radio show host, started interviewing former slaves in 1941 to bring awareness to racism. One such interview was with Fountain Hughes, whose words resonate profoundly. Today, we uncover the chilling story of slavery and breeding farms in antebellum America. Throughout the 18th century, laws steadily stripped enslaved people of their personhood, turning them into objects owned by others. This dehumanizing ideology normalized the buying and selling of human beings without societal objection.
My name is Fountain Hughes. I was born in Charlottesville, Virginia. My grandfather belonged to Thomas Jefferson. My grandfather was 115 years old when he died, and now I am 101 years old.
Hughes, born into slavery, never knew any other life. His story exemplifies the generational trauma inflicted on enslaved families. Prohibiting the importation of slaves into the United States was far from an altruistic act. Key political figures like President Thomas Jefferson, a known slaver, understood the economic importance of slavery. When external slave supplies dwindled, the value of domestic slaves soared. Virginia, Jefferson's home state, became the epicenter of this human breeding industry. As Britain abolished the slave trade in 1807, calls for abolition in America grew louder. However, the demand for slave labor only intensified, especially in the Deep South's lucrative cotton, sugarcane, and rice industries. King cotton dominated the economy, and southern states believed their economic power would prevent conflict with the North. In 1808, the US prohibited slave importation, just as the cotton engine revolutionized agriculture, increasing the need for labor. This ban protected the internal slave market, leading to the chilling practice of breeding enslaved people for profit. Black women became vital assets, with their fertility closely managed by slave owners. Medical care for enslaved women improved, not out of compassion, but to ensure a steady supply of new slaves. Home medical journals were circulated to aid in childbirth, and enslaved women were expected to have multiple children. Advertisements for female slaves often highlighted their breeding stock. Enslaved women were expected to produce 4 to 5 children, and good breeding stock was a common selling point. Many women found themselves continually bartered and incentivized by slave and plantation owners. Some were offered freedom if they bore 15 children, a cruel and dehumanizing proposition. Girls as young as 12 were forced into pregnancy, enduring a cycle of rape, pregnancy, and brief recovery before being forced into it again. Accounts from the time reveal that it was commonplace for slave owners to be intrusive in the sex lives of their property. Arranged marriages and forced mating were part of the culture that began in slavery. With people regarded as chattel, the conditions of their breeding mirrored that of animals.
It was what they call, we were slaves, we belonged to people. They sell us like they sell horses and cows and hogs and all like that, have an auction bench, and they put you up on the bench and bid on you, the same as you're bidding on cattle, you know.
Slave testimony includes references to stockmen, male slaves brought to farms to impregnate female slaves. This practice ensured a continuous supply of laborers, reflecting the brutal efficiency of the system. The study by economist Richard Stooge found that in 1860, Virginia farms had a ratio of female to male slaves around 2 to 1, solely for the breeding industry.
Sell the women, sell the men, oh, they And then if they had any bad ones, they'd sell them to the nigger traders, what they call the nigger traders, and they'd ship them down south and sell them down south.
Once sold, slaves endured harsh conditions. They slept on floors, often with no beds, and wore ragged clothing. Many didn't wear shoes until they were 12 or 13 years old.
Colored people didn't have no beds when they were slaves. They all slept on the floor, pallet here, pallet there. Just like a lot of wild people. We didn't know nothing. Didn't like to look at no book.
Slave diets were poor, often consisting of soups or stews made from scraps. Meals were shared from wooden trays.
Wooden trays, dug out, all about that long. And all of them, would get around that tray with spoons and just eat. Sit like mush or soup or something like that. And all them children get around there and just eat.
Slaves worked tirelessly with no weekends or holidays. They had to meet the endless demands of their masters, often facing severe punishments for any infractions.
Night never comes out. You have nothing to do. Time to cut tobacco. If they want you to cut all night long out in the field, you cut. And if they want you to hang all night long, you hang tobacco. It didn't matter about your being tired, you're afraid to say you're tired.
The fear of punishment was constant. Laura Smalley recounted the brutal whipping of an older woman for defending herself against her mistress.
But the thing that poor old woman carried in the peach orchard and whipped her. And, just tied her hands this way, around the peach orchard tree. I remember that just as well, looked like to me, I can't, and round the tree and whipped her. And well, she couldn't do nothing but just kick her feet, just kick her feet. But it just had her clothes off down to her waist, Just didn't have her plumb naked, but they had her clothes down to her waist. And every now and then they'd whip her, and then snuff the pipe out on her, snuff the pipe out on her. The embers in the pipe, where you ever see the pipe smoking.
Blow them out on her? Good Lord.
Mm-hmm.
House slaves faced the highest risk of sexual abuse, often shielding their children to hide the father's identity. Harriet Jacobs, a house slave, reported her master fathering 11 slaves. This systematic exploitation was purely for profit, with some traders boasting of thousands of slave children born annually. By the mid-1800s, the southern slave trade was worth billions, surpassing the value of gold, silver, and farmland. Shockingly, slaves were even used as collateral for mortgages, turning human lives into financial securities traded globally. This legal transformation from person to property had profound and horrifying consequences. Even though slavery was a practice in which evil was free to roam, there were still some owners who aspired to be better, treating the slaves with more dignity and decorum.
They treated me nice as they could treat me. And they all treated me nice. All the white folks had known that they treated me nice. And if I want anything, I'll ask for it. I was taught it that way by my old master. Don't steal, don't lie. And if you want anything, ask for it. Be honest in what you get. That's what I was raised up with.
Despite this, slaves had little freedom. Simply leaving the property required a pass.
Now I couldn't go from here across the street, or I couldn't go to nobody's house without I have a note or something from my master. And if I had that pass, that was what we call a pass. If I had that pass, I could go wherever he sent me, and I'd have to be back. Whoever he sent me to, they'd give me another pass, and I'd bring that back, so to show how long I'd been gone.
The Emancipation Proclamation offered freedom in theory, but the reality was harsh. Many newly freed slaves found themselves struggling to survive with little to no resources.
I remember when the Yankees come along and took all the good horses and sold all the meat and flour and sugar and stuff out in the river and let it go down the river. And they know the people wouldn't have nothing to live on, but they done that. And if you was cooking anything to eat in there for yourself, and if they was hungry, they'd go and eat it all up, and wouldn't get nothing. They'd just come in and drink up all the milk. Just do as you please.
Slavers resisted the new laws, often withholding the news of freedom from their slaves for months. Many slaves continued working under the false belief that nothing had changed.
And old master didn't tell you, it was free.
He didn't tell you that?
No, he didn't tell. They wait till I think now they said they wait them 6 months out of that. 6 months.
With no guidance or support, the newly freed slaves faced severe hardships.
And if we got free, we didn't know nothing to do. And my mother, she hunted places and bound us out for $1 a month. And we didn't have no property, we didn't have no home. We had nowhere, nothing. We didn't have nothing on it, just like the cattle, we were just turned out and get along the best you could. Colored people is free, you ought to be awful thankful. And some of them are sorry they are free now. Some of them now would rather be slaves.
Freedom brought its own set of challenges, as many former slaves found themselves with nothing, facing a world that still viewed them with hostility.
Mom and them didn't know where to go. You see, after freedom broke, just like you turn something out, you know. Didn't know where to go. That's just where they stayed. Didn't know where to go.
Fountain Hugh's words captured the deep despair felt by many.
You know what I'd rather do? If I thought, had any idea, that I'd ever be a slave again, I'd take a gun and just end it all right away. Because you're nothing but a dog.
As we reflect on this dark chapter in American history, it's crucial to recognize that the shadows of slavery still linger in many parts of the world. The chains may have been broken in one land, but the echoes of oppression continue to reverberate across continents. Forced labor, exploitation, and the objectification of human beings persist in various forms. But let us not forget, the voices of those who suffered, who fought, and who endured are not just echoes of the past. They are a call to action for us today. The fight against slavery and injustice is not over. It is our responsibility to continue this struggle, to shine a light on these injustices, and to ensure that the dignity and freedom of every human being are upheld, now and forever.